Everybody, let's give it up. The CEO and founder of Zaarly, Bo Fishback. Here we go. That's the way to get introduced, right?
It's pretty good.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
You good there on the mic?
Yeah, great.
Okay. So we want to talk about Zaarly. We want to talk about all these things this crazy year you've had over the last 12
Sure.
months. But wanted to just start and just talk a little bit about your background, kind of where you came from, if you always plan to be an entrepreneur and those things. So tell us a little bit about where you're from. What's your background?
I grew up in like the middle of nowhere, Georgia. Drove 50 miles to school every day from the time I was in kindergarten. And my dad started a company when I was actually, I think, about 4 or 5 years old. And he drove that same distance every day to go to work and ended up, between the time I was 4 years old to I graduated high school, building a pretty big company. And so I grew up in a house where this was like, I remember when he was like in our garage, and it was a big deal because he moved to my grandma's garage. And then I remember his first office and the first building he built. And when I was about 13, my little brother and I started our first company. He was 11 at the time. We did this super, super sexy thing of helping pick up garbage in rural Georgia. And that's
It's a big business.
A huge, huge business, right?
Great market cap.
Yeah, and waste management's pretty big, right? Like it worked out for them. So so ended up going to college at SMU. My undergrad's actually in biomedical engineering. I've used that 0 days in my entire life. And the first job that I had out of school was actually building a startup inside of a bigger company, and we were doing consumer-facing web nerdy stuff, but in the healthcare space. And so we were building like healthcare records like on top of big clinical systems, and we ended up building like a really awesome company out of it. And I was like 24, and I had like 100 people working for me, and it was like totally crazy. And it was in the crazy 2000, and I thought we were going to make $1 billion and spin the company off, and then the bottom fell out of everything. And I was like, oh, glad we have this big company like hooking us up. And so eventually I got ready. I wanted to spin that company off. They liked that idea less than I did. They wanted to spin it in closer to the rest of the company, and I started applying to business school and started another company while I was actually doing that got pretty lucky with. It was just a good timing social networking company. Went to business school at Harvard, spun a company out of MIT that was a human genome sequencing company, sold it about 4 years ago when I was actually at Kauffman, and in the meantime ended up being the head of entrepreneurship at Kauffman and just having like a total blast doing like philanthropy in the startup space. It was the most fun job of all time.
Yeah. You seem like you're probably naturally kind of a lazy person, it sounds like.
Super lazy, yeah. I'm really good at being bored. I'll tell you, I sold a company. I thought I was pretty sure that I was like 25, and I was like, I'm gonna like take a minute, hang out, and I had a great idea. I was gonna be a professional golfer. I grew up outside of Augusta, Georgia, and so I was like, it's great. I'm like work my ass off of this for a year. I'm gonna get great at golf. It's gonna be amazing. And 9 days in, I was like, I'm gonna gouge my eyes out. I'm so bored. I was like, I gotta go do something else here. So,
were you as you came out of SMU, were you planning to do entrepreneurship? You did it as a teenager. Was that something that you said, hey, I'm going to run my own business, or where was your head at?
I don't know. It's weird. Like I've got one of my co-founders was like, I was in college during like the crazy 90s boom or whatever. And one of my co-founders, the same age, he was in that too. He dropped out of college twice in the process to go work on startups and ended up eventually graduating. I was kind of oblivious actually to like all that. Like I just had fun in college. And I thought someday I wanted to go like run my own company, but I didn't know what another option was. Yeah. And I just always been involved in startups. I've never had like a real job, I guess.
You're by far the tallest person we've ever had on the stage, and
it's pretty huge.
It's a huge deal. Yeah, we should get you a trophy or something. So you played as a point guard at SMU, right?
In high school, I did.
You did.
I went to SMU to play like a 2-guard. I thought, whatever, but it turns out I wasn't that good at basketball after all, and so that didn't last very long.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you go through all these startups, and then you end up in LA working with the Kauffman Foundation, right?
I was in Kansas City, actually.
Kansas City.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after business school, lived in Boston. My wife's a doctor, and she was deciding where to do her residency, and she like fell in love with the radiology program at the University of Kansas Medical Center. And I was like, all right, whatever. I can do this startup thing anywhere. And at the time, I was actually flying back and forth between Kansas City and Palo Alto. It's a genomics company, and I met some people at Kauffman. And just like totally fell in love with the organization and started as like this would be a fun thing to hang around for a little while, and then it got more and more involved and just ended up getting to do some really, really amazing things there.
And how did you get synced up with that? I mean, that's a pretty great job. How did you land that job? Was there someone that you knew, or?
No, total cold email to somebody that said like, "Hey, I'm in Kansas City. Like, heard you guys are here too. Like, want to hang out?" And I went to breakfast with a lady who works there still, who's a really great friend named Lisa Mitchell. And we had breakfast, and what a breakfast meeting turned into like 2 days of like, I guess, interviews, right? I felt like I just ate the entire time. And so just like ate for 2 days at the Kauffman Foundation. And then I don't know, it was a good fit. It's a tiny organization, like 80 people work there.
Yeah.
And it was just a great two-way fit. Like,
and
we knew.
Talk about some of the things that you did there. You said you worked on AngelList. And you worked on some other things.
So like I knew Nivy and Naval when it was only Venture Hacks. I remember I called Nivy about like 3 or 4 years ago when it was just Venture Hacks and AngelList didn't exist, and I was like, dude, you're not gonna get this call very often, but like I want to give you some money like with no strings attached, but you got to come and see me in Kansas City. And I don't know if anybody in here knows Nivy, but he's like a hilarious kind of like recluse. And he comes walking into the Kauffman Foundation wearing like a suit from the 70s, and his button shirt is tucked into his tighty-whitey underwear, which are pulled out of his pants. It was so awesome. And I was like, yeah, I want to give this
That's
dude
the
some
guy
money.
I want to write that check for. Sure.
And so we started talking about Venture Hacks and where they were going, and it was just when they were playing around with the idea of AngelList, and so ended up seed funding AngelList, and then actually leading the next round of financing that they did, and then did a pretty big deal that actually like helped really grow Startup Weekend, which some of you guys might know is an organization. We did like a $3 million grant with Startup Weekend and made them really a part of a lot of what the Kauffman Foundation does, and then strangely enough, they ended up playing kind of an integral role in my life as it became about launching Zaarly.
Yeah, one more question on AngelList, then I want to get into Startup Weekend. What was the vision that they had 3 years ago, or that you talked to them about? Was it where they're at today? How much has it evolved? How much did they have then? Because they've really, I mean, in the last 18 months, I mean, they've really started to kill it.
Yeah. Really crisp vision. Those guys are amazing. Naval and Nivy are both like they're super duper sharp guys. Naval had a really clear vision quite early on of what AngelList should be. They'd actually tried to start it before a few years ago, and didn't turn the corner. But the way they came out of the gate this time, like I think actually they have just like fired on all cylinders. I think what they're doing today is what they thought they would be doing today 3 years ago.
Yeah. I've interviewed Naval a couple times. We had him a few months ago, and he is. There are very few people that I have met in Silicon Valley that are smarter than Naval Ravikant.
He's the man. He's an investor in Zaarly too, so he was in our seed round.
It's a good little plug there.
Yeah, he's the man.
He's great. So okay, so take us back to February. Take us back a really, really long time ago, February 2011.
Right.
So you're getting involved in Startup Weekend. You're thinking about going to be a judge, and tell us how that happened.
A friend of mine who's on the board at Startup Weekend, and I was on the board at Startup Weekend or advisory board or whatever we were. We went to meetings quarterly with him. It was his birthday last year in February, and he was like, "Dude, for my birthday, will you please come to Startup Weekend in LA? It's gonna be really fun." It was the NBA All-Star Game was that weekend, and I had some other friends there from like the angel investor world that I thought I was gonna hang out with, and I literally bought my ticket on Thursday before the Startup Weekend, and flew out there on Friday, spent the afternoon messing around at Koloft, which is where the event is there, and I listened to 30 pitches on Friday night, and I kept waiting for somebody to pitch something that I was like super psyched about, and it didn't happen, and the whole time
You're sitting in the crowd.
Yeah, I was sitting in the front row. I wasn't planning on pitching or anything. I was just there to like hang out and have fun and like help some teams or whatever, and I always keep this little file on my phone of just ideas that I like that I wish someone would pitch me, and like with an angel hat on, like, hey, would love to invest in these, and the more I was just sitting here, like literally looking at the notes file on my iPhone, I was like, you know what, like, fuck it, I'm gonna just pitch something. And so after everybody went, I was like not in line. I was like, can I do something really quick? And I did just an absolutely horrific, terrible pitch. Like 1 minute, I called it GeoBay, like a hyper local eBay, right? So clever. I made that up as I was walking up there to do this, and. And then for whatever reason, a couple people thought that sounded like a fun weekend project, and that night we named it Zaarly, and about 2 p.m. the next day, we just had one of those like moments that was like, oh my God, like we could build an amazing company here, and it would be neat to win Startup Weekend, but like we're going to do this thing. And so there was 10 people that worked on it that weekend with us.
Yeah, so talk about, and how many of them did you know before the weekend started? One guy.
Yeah, one I knew, and I'd only known him for honestly a little while.
And he was what? What was his role?
On the
technical,
team. No, not technical. He's an ex-lawyer. He used to be a startup attorney at Cooley. Right. Like terrible. worst human ever. He's the best co-founder ever. He's amazing. And then the other guy who actually ended up being our third co-founder was the technical guy, and we literally just asked, we're like, hey, we need somebody who can build awesome stuff during the weekend. Who's the best developer? And they pointed at this guy.
He's just sitting in the room.
Yeah, and we went and sold him. We're like, dude, we need you to work with us this weekend. Like, we heard you're badass.
Yeah.
And he's our other.
Well, you're
founder.
Pretty intimidating. I mean, it can't be that hard to sell. Like you're like a normal fun guy, but like you kind of have like that presence. Like I'll say like you pitch him with a smile, but if he doesn't say yes, like. He could have trouble, right?
I don't know. No, he's a pretty tough dude. Actually, he's like a total programmer. Like he's at the gym a lot. So, but he's honestly just turned like. I mean, like it's the last thing I would ever advise someone to do is start a company with somebody they met that weekend. Like it's a terrible idea.
It's like marrying somebody after a day, right?
We like won the human capital lottery with this guy. Like Ian Hunter, he's our CTO and co-founder, and he's an amazing human. He is an amazing co-founder. He's an amazing CTO developer. He is just he's a total rock star, and we just got lucky.
So that's the first three, and then who else did you have in there?
That was it. There was 10 people in the room that weekend, but then like on Monday, like the way that these startup weekends work, like at the end, if you have a big team, you got to do like team cleanup because like I'm like philosophically and in all ways averse to all companies that have 5 founders or more. I think it's like the surest recipe for disaster ever.
Why is that?
Too many people, too many. It's impossible to not. I mean, think about how hard marriage is with one other person. Like, try doing that with 6 people simultaneously, right? Like, just sounds terrible.
Right? Jeff here he dates like 5 or 6 at a time. So
that dates though, right? Like he's not going to marry.
Oh, dating,
so.
yeah, it's true.
And so I see they say like a third of all technology companies fail because of founder disputes. Yeah. Like no market test, no nothing. Like founder dispute causes companies to fail, and the more people you introduce into that mix, like the more your odds go up. And so I love 3-person founding teams, outside guy, inside guy, product guy. Like I'm a big believer in that as like a model, and at the end of these startup weekends, like we had 10 people, and it was like a call to say like, hey, we want to keep you on as advisors and help and all that kind of stuff. But like the 3 of us are really going to go and do this thing. So like, thanks for the help this weekend, and that's like what we did.
Okay, so then you finish on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So you finish on Sunday. What then happens on Monday? What happens that next week?
Well, the color of that weekend was that like we had some nice friends because we've been working in this space for a while, and so a lot of people heard about us that weekend actually. LeVar Burton, who was the Kunta Kinte in the Roots, and then he was the dude from Reading Rainbow, and then he was like the black dude in Star Trek with that
Jordy.
Yeah, exactly. So LeVar's a friend of mine, and I've known LeVar for a while. I actually helped him start a company that he's running now.
It's like a family. It's like a parent or child or something. It's like an app or.
It's
in that space,
all
right?
the rights to Reading Rainbow,
yeah.
like that he was on, and
it is
building an
Reading
iPad app, and it's called RR Kids is the company. Anyway, so I just sent him a note. And I was like, hey, dude, I'm in LA. I'm working on this thing. It's pretty cool. He tweeted about it. He's got like 1.8 million Twitter followers, and then like a lot of people started signing up for a non-existent product. Yeah. And then I had about a couple weeks before when I was just going to hang out there, I'd sent Ashton Kutcher an email because we'd just kind of been emailing.
And he responded.
For a little while. Well, we knew each other,
sure.
And he's like into the startup. I know, right? Right.
Same.
Right. It's just what it is, right? Yeah. Like it's weird, but it sounds like name droppy. But it's like I invited him to Startup Weekend, and I was like, "Hey, dude, like you should come and check this out. Like it will blow your mind what people can do in 54 hours." And he emailed me on Saturday of Startup Weekend and was like, "Hey, dude, I'm going to come by and bring a couple friends if that's cool." And I was like,
"Who is it?" It's like.
It was
Who did he bring?
Demi Moore and sure. Rimmer, her daughter, and then Anthony, who runs Catalyst, which is his company in LA. And so I was like, sweet, right? And like, so I knew this, but no one else at Startup Weekend knew. And I was thinking like, this would be so cool. Like, it's gonna be like a cool little gift to the Startup Weekend people. Like, they're gonna be all geeked. Ashton shows up and whatever. And it ended up being a gift to myself. I just didn't know it. And so we showed up. They spent all day, 6 hours on Sunday, just going from team to team, talking, giving feedback. And he's like he's a great investor and a really active investor. So it's not like he's new to the scene or whatever. And anyway, he ended up being a stand-in for a judge that I was not. And
he took your spot.
Yeah, and then so we had 5 judges that night. We pitched. We won at midnight that night. I had 3 proposals for term sheets in my inbox and a note from him that was like, "Hey, dude, if you're gonna really do this, I'd be interested."
Wow.
And then sent a couple notes. I mean, we closed our seed round 2 days later with like Naval and Ron Conway and Ashton and the Lightbank Groupon founders. Like all, I mean,
sure.
it was a good group of people.
And so, just step back a little bit. So, when you say you know Ashton, because I know this is a question that a lot of people as I talk to him about, you come in here, they're like, well, how in the world does he know these celebrities?
It's so retarded. I know.
So, like, how do you know? I mean, did you and Ashton? I mean, what is that connection? Well, how do you know him?
That particular connection was introduction from a mutual friend. I remember the first email they sent, it was probably 2 years ago. It said, Kuchar plus Fishback plus Kaufman equals awesome. And it was just like, you guys need to meet each other because you're both doing cool stuff in the startup space. We were just helping AngelList get going, do the startup weekend stuff. He'd done about 20 investments, a lot of them with Ron Conway, and was trying to figure out like what can he do to be helpful to the companies he's working on. And so we started talking totally in that context. But I mean, in some ways, like that's why this company's been able to go so fast, right? Like we spent like 10 years, all of us,
cultivating
all of our
relationships.
Founders. Like, I mean, I think about it as like we spent 10 years like depositing in the Karma Bank, never with an expectation of like withdrawing anything. But then when all of a sudden we decided we want to go do something crazy, like, I mean, literally, like Naval wrote me back when I told him I was leaving Kaufman and said, "Can I invest?" And I said, "I don't think I've told you what we're doing yet." And he was like, "But yeah, but like, if you were leaving, I know you love what you do. Like, I'm interested." And that doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, there's other ways to get those relationships. Like YC is like amazing, right? Like you can be 24 and go in there and meet all these people.
Right.
That wasn't. I mean, we're like older than those kids, and like.
Well, you're 26, right?
Right.
25.
33, and both of my co-founders, like one of them's 34 and one of them's 33, and like we had 10 years of relationships that ended up being like unbelievably helpful in getting this company off the ground.
Is that just a mentality that you guys have always had? That when you say like, you're constantly banking, doing
Karma,
things for other people. Yeah, like is that just naturally how you are, or is that just something you've made a point to do for a long time, or what?
No,
where does that stem
from?
from?
We are just nice people. I work with really, really nice people, and like everyone at Zaarly's like this now. Like we're almost 40 people.
Yeah.
And it's like really like the nicest group of human beings I've ever been around. It's like you could be locked in a small restaurant for 5 hours with any one of them and have like a really lovely experience. And like we hire for that, and like it just ended up being like an important part of our company.
Yeah. Cool. So 2 days later, you have a signed term sheet?
Yeah. I think we had terms all laid out, whatever. It takes a minute to get everybody's signature or whatever, but like that week it was all done.
Okay. And then what was the next thing? What did you do the following week?
We were building a really shitty version of Zaarly because we were dumb enough to think that 10 days later we were going to debut at South by Southwest. And we did it. And it was hilarious, actually. Those first couple weeks in the following
web-based version?
Amazing. So
because you couldn't have been on the App Store that quickly.
No App Store. So we built a mobile web optimized version of Zaarly. I was actually looking at screenshots of it the other day. Like in hindsight, not that far off from what we have today. It's just better today. So we built an HTML5 version that works in the mobile browser. We planned on turning it on the first day of South by, which was literally 10 days after the startup weekend event. And so we were like, no one slept, like no one ate. I think Ian, or my CTO, who built most of the first version, was literally in LA for startup weekend, moving back to New York. And so instead of moving back to New York, I told him to just drive to San Francisco. And like 2 months later, he had people emailing him like, "Hey, dude, did you never come back to New York?" Like he just like disappeared, right? So we rented an RV the week of South by Southwest. I was at Kinko's at 4 a.m. printing signs that we hung on the side of our RV. I had my father-in-law drive to Austin and pay $3,000 for a parking spot for 5 days so that we could have a home base in the middle of Austin. Thursday, the site wasn't ready. On Friday, it wasn't ready. On Saturday, it wasn't ready. And TechCrunch wanted to write a piece on us because we had so much buzz in our long lifespan of 10 days. And I was like, we don't have anything. And then on Sunday night, actually, Nivi's brother ended up being like our final tester on this farm, who's a good friend of mine, and basically said on Saturday night when we thought we were ready to go live, he's like, "No one's going to understand this. You guys totally screwed it up." So we stayed up all night. We called in a favor to a friend who was a developer who happened to be in Austin. Okay. And I remember like 10 o'clock at night, he came walking across the parking lot to our ghetto RV with his like MacBook Pro under his arm, and it was like
looked like out of a superhero movie.
Caliber, right? And he's like, he was actually ended up being our first employee. We hired him on Monday after South by, and he's a totally amazing guy. And he coded all night. I fell asleep in the RV on the couch, and I woke up in the morning, and he was folding up his computer, and he said, "I think we're good to go." We turned it on at noon that day, and Alexia wrote a piece on TechCrunch about us, and in 24 hours, we had $10,000 go through the system in a 6-block area in downtown Austin. Something no one really had ever heard of, and there's no reason for that to happen, and the product was terrible. And this guy over here, Eric, was a student at Michigan State University at the time, and it was his spring break that week, and instead of going on spring break, he flew to Austin and was just fulfilling stuff for people because he just wanted to be a part of it. And we were like, oh my God, this terrible version that we built in 10 days works. Like, let's go build a real one. So we turned it off. and then
Right after or in the middle of South by?
After one day,
Okay.
we turned it off. Yeah.
Was it crashing? Was it staying up?
Only time it crashed is when Ashton tweeted about it and it crashed.
Okay.
Oops.
That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, right, like high class problem. So
First world problems.
right, very much so. And so so it was good. We got great buzz, and we actually legally, I don't think we're incorporated at the time, because we then drove to San Antonio and stayed at my grandparents' house and did all the paperwork and like figured out what we were going to do next and made the list of people we wanted to hire and like said, hey, it would be amazing if we could get somebody like Meg Whitman involved, who's now on our board. And some of that took a minute, but yeah, we went kind of heads down for the next couple months, like building a real product.
Yeah. Okay. So you get through South.
Sounds crazy, right? All this sounds
yeah,
totally
it is crazy.
Sorry.
For sure. No, it doesn't sound crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible story, and like to think that literally was 1 year ago, basically this month, or 13 months ago is pretty remarkable. So just talk to us, give us a little bit more detail. So you get through South by, now you've got 4 guys, right? You're a team of 4.
Yeah.
And you then do you move, you're back up here to San Francisco.
We had this great idea in the beginning that it was like, so what we did is we sat down in San Antonio and we basically made the list of the 5 people that each of us had ever worked with that we would love to work with again, like the superstars. And right, if you think about it, right, it's actually hard to come up with like 5 amazing people that you've worked with who could be helpful on what you're working on. Hard to get to 5, right? I think a couple of us only got to 3. And then we made the list of the 3 people in the world who we have no relation to that we'd like to get involved in this thing. And that was the one that
really
Meg
cool.
ended up being number 1 on the list. And we started calling those people.
Did you call her Megan?
No, Meg.
Meg, okay.
Meg,
Sorry,
yeah.
okay.
So, no, yeah, and we started calling those people and being like, hey, dude, we need help. I think in the process of building this company last year, we've shut down like 3 or 4 companies because people were running their own company, and we talked them into spinning that down and coming to be a part of this.
Awesome.
And so we just went to work. It was like we want to release this as fast as possible. We need a designer. We need another developer. We actually know we need someone who can develop mobile. We don't want to do that right now, so like we'll outsource it to some Russians or whatever, right? And it was like fast. Everything was fast, and yeah, that's pretty much was the deal. And at the same time, we started thinking, like, we started realizing marketplaces are hard companies to build. Like, it's not like a nice social app where you like hit the right loop and it takes care of itself. Like, that ain't how marketplaces work, right?
Yeah.
You got to make supply and demand work. You got to have something there for both parties, all this kind of stuff. And so we realized we're going to need some of that, and we started getting some young, like 22-year-olds who were graduating college and people who just wanted to like be involved and hustle and stuff. We put them all on 2 and 3 month contracts in the beginning because they weren't on those lists of 5 people. And the ones that ended up not being a great fit, like their contract just ended and like have a nice day. And the ones who ended up being a great fit, like Eric, are like a part of this ride.
So I mean, I that's a really clever idea to get smart people into your company, but how do you actually close those people? I mean, it's one thing to write it down like, oh, these are the best people I've ever worked with. It's a whole nother ballgame to like actually convince that person to stop whatever it is cool that they're doing, shut down their company even, and then join Zaarly. How do you do that?
Yeah, I had a lot of those conversations.
Was it?
I think a couple things. I think one is like we're really clear on what we're trying to do. This is not a company that has pivots in its life. Like there's no pivot in this company, right? Like we know exactly what we're trying to get done. I don't know if we're going to get it done or not, but if we do, like we're not trying to build a company that we sell for $200 million to Facebook. Like we're trying to build a $50 billion company, like our generation's eBay. And like everyone is very clear on that. This is like a swing for the fences play, and like maybe we die trying, or like maybe we get it done. Like I don't really know, but it is a boil the ocean, like do something massive. And I don't care as cheesy as it sounds, like it doesn't matter what anybody says, like people want meaning in what they're doing. And part of it, what we do is like there's magic in what this company does, right? Like we do, like the first order benefit is very simple. Like people get what they want, right? Like whoop-de-doo, that's what you get on all markets. It's nice when it happens conveniently, you meet a new person. The magic of this is the second order benefit is like we create a no excuses employment market where anybody who wants work, anybody who wants to make money for stuff they currently have can opt in. But it only works like at scale, right? So like you sell the vision and then you make it sound believable. But a lot of it was that like people really trusted us starting this company, and like I mean, I'm
because
still
of those
grateful.
10 years, right?
I think partly because of the 10 years. I think partly because all of us walked away from stuff that was pretty damn awesome to do this. Like this was not, we were not dudes looking to just start a company. We were not looking to like grass is greener on the other side. I loved my job. Like I loved it. My wife was 6 months pregnant with our first baby. I gave away $100 million a year to help the startup ecosystem work better. Like that's like a fairy tale life, right? And like in a weekend, I was like, bye-bye, I'm going to do this other thing. And I actually think that carried a lot of weight with people. Like people were like, damn, Like, he must believe what he's doing.
Yeah, he's either crazy or he's
and,
right.
And that's like yet to be determined still. But
Yeah.
like, right, like enough people believed it that we have like a pretty fucking amazing team now. So,
Well, at what point did you hit that, like, where you really believe that it was something that big? Now, you talked about on Saturday as you're working on
2
it.
p.m. Saturday startup weekend.
That's when it hit you.
Yep, and it hasn't changed one tiny bit since. Like we're doing the exact same thing we set out to do that day. Which is weird, right? Like, I've never seen a company like that before, and right, like you could take the other side of this and be like, dude, if you're not open to having to pivot or whatever, like blah 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 blah, like you shoot yourself in the foot. Like, that's not this company. Like what we're working on, 100% chance is going to work. Whether or not we're the guys to do it and really pull it off and build a huge company, I don't know. Timing could be wrong, whatever. With all, like, definitely for sure, this will work though. Like, hopefully now.
But you're saying that you guys will spend every ounce of effort and energy that you have at Zaarly to make this idea work, and if it doesn't work, then
whatever. It was like
it's
a
not
great
gonna
experience,
Yeah.
like in the frothiest bubble shit of all time. Like, we got to build like a high profile company and have like amazing people involved, and like Ashton Kutcher calls me every 2 weeks and like, what? A People magazine, like, divorces like impact my company? Like, what the hell is that, right? Like, everybody in this company is signed up for like the ride and the experience as much as they are like the outcome and whatever. Like, I don't. There's no one at Zaarly who sits around thinking about like how much money they make when we sell to eBay. Like, that's not this company.
Yeah.
This is a company that like knows the world should work differently than it does today, and like believes with everything in it that like what we're working on is the thing that's going to enable that. And like, there's like 40 of us now, right? Like, now we just need like 400 million of us and we're ready to go. So we're like partway there, 6 orders of magnitude off.
So talk about. So I just want. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how Meg Whitman came into this and
Sure.
your round of funding? So you launched in the beginning of 2011. Towards the end of 2011, you raised a really big round, about $14 million or so,
Yeah.
and you add Kleiner Perkins, you add Meg Whitman. Was there a need for that? I mean, you guys have had a business model from the beginning,
Sure.
which is awesome. And is it something that you needed it to scale to grow faster? What kind of played into that next round?
I mean, well, I'll be really honest, I guess, about this and say that like a big part of it was like we had like real honest conversations about like we value the experience of this whole thing, right? Like, after South by, we got bombarded by investor interest like I've never heard of in my life. I had 200 unsolicited calls from investors in 90 days. What?
Do you take those calls? What do you do with that?
That's all I did for 2 months, right? I had other dudes building product. I don't know how to do that, so I was like, I don't know, talk to these dudes. And it was like, and it was just like call after call, and I literally had like investors call and threaten me that if I didn't let them invest in this company, then they were going to seed a competitor, and I was like, click. And so like, started doing like the vetting to figure out if it was a good fit for us. I don't believe in like firm names. I believe in like individuals that you work with. And like the reason we ended up working with Kleiner was because the partner that we work with there, a guy named Chiwa Chen, is just like a total badass, and I love him. Like, he works his ass off for us, and he's like the hardest working venture capitalist on the planet. And
talk about some of the things he does or some of your investors do.
Yeah, so he spends like about a half day a week in our office. And our office is in the city, and his is out here. I mean, it's not like a tiny commitment to go and do that thing. He does the same thing with Clout, who he's in, and Path, who's the partner there that works with those guys too. I mean, I'm not a huge like inherent believer in like the value of smart money and stuff. I kind of think blah blah blah. Whatever, teams build companies, like, not investors. And he has the same attitude. Like, he strives to make Kleiner Perkins the world's greatest service provider to entrepreneurs, and I like love everything about that attitude. I mean, he was one of the very last investors that I talked to, and we talked to like all the fancy guys, and we got really, really nice term sheets from everybody, and like our like valuations very, very good, and part of that was timing, and part of that was like we had a nice story, and we actually ended up giving those guys a discount because I liked them so much to the other kind of opportunities we had, and in the very first meeting that I ever had with him, there's no slides, there's no nothing. All we did was play with our iPhone app. We just played with it, and we got 30 minutes in, and he was like, I don't think I've ever said this before in a first meeting, but like, I would really like to invest in your company if you'll have me. And I was like, that's such a nice way to say that. And it was a Thursday. I had a 3-week-old baby in Kansas City at the time. And he was like, wait, you have a 3-week-old baby at home? What are you doing here? I was like, I know. What am I doing here? And he said, is there any way you can be back Monday morning? And I was like, sure. And so went home for the weekend and said, hey, babe, I got to go I got to go back Sunday.
Raise some bills.
Yeah, and walked into a room on Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and it was John Doerr, and it was all the fancy schmancies at Kleiner. And Meg was in the room. This was when she was a Kleiner.
Okay.
And it was weird. It was like we had a 1 hour meeting, like 10 people around the table, me and Eric and Ian, my co-founders, and about 8 folks from Kleiner.
Are you guys talking, or are they just throwing you questions?
I literally walked in, and Chihuahua was like, do your thing. And I was like, you gonna tee it up or anything, bro? And he was like, nah, dude. And I was like, I'm Bo. And like, it was weird actually. Like, Ian, you want to introduce yourself? He's like, Ian Hunter, good to meet you. Eric, you want to introduce yourself? Eric Custer, good to meet you. And then I think in hindsight, like I pretty much just talked nonstop for 60 minutes. And then they were like, but I knew I could tell 15 minutes in. At one point, Meg stopped me 15 minutes in, and she's like, oh my God, I have chills. This reminds me so much of a story I've seen before. And I was like, that sounds good, because it reminds me of that story too. And then at the end of this, they were like, hey, go sit in that other room over there. And I was like, all right. So I went and sat in this other room. And like 3 minutes later, Chihuahua came in and was like, so John Doerr said, buy as much of that company as you can right now. And I was like, I think that's good. And then we just, started hammering out terms and stuff. And it was like, I mean, literally, like, we would have signed a term sheet that day, but it takes a little longer because we had some other investors and stuff involved, and kind of off to the races.
Wow. And so Meg Whitman came from there and she said, hey, I want to be involved, or she do.
I said that. I said, we're not doing a deal with you unless Meg's part of the package. And so that was actually one of the things that took the afternoon, because she left right after the meeting. She was like, absolutely, like, let's do this thing. And so we ended up having a phone call with her later, and she was like, yes, like, let's do this. And she was at Kleiner at the time, right? So during the course of, she agreed to be on the board, and then like 30 days later or whatever it was, like before we'd actually like, we were in like the due diligence period or whatever it is, but that just is time to like make sure that they're not investing in a sinking ship, I think. She got named to the CEO of HP, and it was like, oh Christ, this is terrible news. And so the day of the announcement, actually, I sent her an email, and I was like, hey, Meg, we cool? And she wrote me back like that night, literally the day it got announced on CNBC. She wrote me back and said, I'm taking everything off my calendar for at least the next 6 months. This is going to be like a huge thing that I've got to go and tackle at HP. Like, calendar is clean, but I'd really like to keep you on it because I'm really interested in what you're working on. And I was like, yes.
That's awesome.
And then, we've got a board meeting tomorrow, like right up the road at HP, and we do all the board meetings in her office and just try to make it easy on her as possible, because she's got like a real job. But, I've told a couple people before, like I'd take 90 minutes for Meg over 90 hours of almost anybody I've ever met with before. It's amazing.
So I would say your story is quite unique.
It's a good one, huh?
It is a really awesome story. It's like the story when I felt my kid.
Yeah, me too, right? That's actually been, I was going to say one thing about the Kleiner thing, right? Like, I remember, like, Ian and Eric and I, when we were sitting in that conference room, we were like, what is the point at which
this
we'll
is the
do
holding
this
room?
deal? Yeah, this is in the holding room,
Yeah.
right? And honestly, like, what it really came down to was, like, one, we think Meg can be helpful. Isn't it crazy we put her on that list a few months ago? And two was, like, come on. It's like the experience, right? Like, if you're going to do this, you might as well just like own it and like do the whole experience. And so, it's a funny thing, like how much money it was and stuff. That's not actually an important part of the conversation when you get to this point. Like, Kleiner's got 10 billion under management or whatever. They don't care. They're going to put in 8 million, 12 million, 3 million, whatever it is. I mean, they care about percentage ownership and stuff. But what you're optimizing for is not like, I need $14 million because that's where it's going to get me. You're optimizing around like, hopefully this will get us to the next point where like there's something amazing happens where our valuation's 10 times higher, or like we don't need any more money. And so it wasn't that calculated, right? Like, I didn't do one financial projection of this company ever. Still haven't done one. Like not part of the deal. The slide deck, someday I'll publish this slide deck that like I use with all these guys. It was like 10 slides, almost all of them had one sentence, and it was either like you believe that this is possible or you don't. And like a lot of people believed, crazily enough, but when we still don't know if it is, right? Like, no one has been like vindicated or proven right yet.
Sure.
But like, so far so good.
Yeah, you got good indicators.
Yeah.
Let's so this last year has been incredible. It's been crazy.
It's exhausting.
Talk about, like, has your life always been this good? Because it seems like things are going really, really well right now. So talk about you've done lots of startups.
Look, I think that's like a perspective question, right? Like, I fundamentally believe I'm the luckiest human being on the face of the earth, and I've kind of thought that since I was since I can remember. I've always thought it, right? Like, whatever. I was homecoming king in high school, right?
Is that right?
Whoa, huge,
Wow,
right? Like,
that's a first. Did we
like,
get
and
that?
I was like
Exclusive.
surprised. I was like surprised, like, whoa, look at this, right? Like, I think I have been like extremely fortunate at like pretty much every turn, but I also think that like that's perspective as much as anything else. I have a terrible memory for all bad things. I've been like the reason I was like a good basketball player because I instantly forgot all missed shots. I was like halftime, I had like 23 points. I was like, I'm killing it. And the next game, I had like 3 points. I was like, I'm killing it. Like I don't have a memory for the bad, and like I really like embrace good things and like try to build on them. And I think it's I think you have to be a little bit like this to do what we're doing. Like we like are. We're super optimistic about the future and human beings and like what is possible and at what pace it's possible, and maybe we're delusional, but like I'd rather be delusional and have fun than be like a cynical asshole.
Well, how do you so you've always had that, but I mean, I can't imagine everyone on your team's like that. How do you
A lot of them are.
how do you cultivate that skill of like just brushing it off? I mean, I met with an entrepreneur last night who got thrashed on Hacker News, and he was like, it had beaten him up. It was the first time he'd been like ripped apart in the press.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, like, I don't read that stuff. I don't read any press about Zaarly. None. I don't read social media about Zaarly. Like, I don't do it. Like, people say really nice things about us, actually, but I only hear it because, like, my wife tells me that she saw it on Twitter or something. She's like, oh, da, da, da. And she's like, did you see this? I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Right? Like, I don't, it's not helpful, and it's not constructive. And, like, if anything, like, this year, I've gotten a huge appreciation for the fact that, like, it's real funny. Like, people get, especially out here, right? Like, in the Valley, people get real, critical over what other people are doing, and they say like, oh, that startup's never going to work, what's the business model, whatever, blah blah blah. And like what I think like every time is like, you don't know, you don't work there. Like these people are like putting like their like soul into this thing, and like what amazing things spring from unanticipated places, like no one knows, right? Like I think it's funny, like just like the little the way that people like to analyze stuff like that from the outside when there is so little transparency to what's going on in startups,
right,
that like I just can't give a lot of credit to it. And I think that I do honestly think like in Zaarly it's like we have an amazing culture, and part of it is because we hired heavily on social proof. Like we hired like friends of people that we hired, and people will tell you that's a bad idea, but that is like what makes this company. Like this is like a company that like fundamentally like loves each other in a way that like I've never been around a group of 40 people who are like that. And
it's weird,
like,
but it's cool.
It is. It's super weird, and I feel like really fortunate to be like a part of it, even though like I started it, and like more often than not, I'm like, man, I'm lucky to be on this ride. And I think a lot of people have that attitude. Like really, like I mean, you could pull anybody. It's already like they are grateful for the opportunity and the time that we have been given to work on something like this, and I think we do pay attention to that.
Yeah. Do you want to tell that story about you were talking about Drew?
Yeah, it was one of my
cool
favorite
story.
stories. So Drew Houston, who started Dropbox, the CEO of Dropbox, is amazing guy. I've known him for a few years, and maybe longer than that actually. Maybe a few years ago, actually, I was having dinner with him at an event, and Dropbox was just like really starting to get some traction and get rocking. And I was like, dude, you guys are killing it. Next year this time, like you'll be exited. What are you going to do then? You're like 28 or whatever you are, right? And he said 0% chance that we'll get acquired in the next year. I was like, why? He's like, I'll never let it happen. And I was like, yeah, that's what everybody says. I'll see you next year when you get like 300 mil in the bank. And he was like, dude, you'll see. And I was like, why? And he said, this is the fifth startup I've been a part of. This is the fifth startup I've been a part of, actually. Zaarly is too. So like kind of really like rings home now maybe. And he said the first 4 startups I was a part of, like MIT, like fancy schmancy guys, the whole time we were like pushing the boulder uphill, and it was so hard, and we were like paddling the sailboat and trying to make it work. And from the day we started Dropbox, like the sail has been full of wind. It has just been at our back, and every time we need something good to happen, it's happened. And he's like, I don't know where this thing is going to go, but like I refuse to give up that experience for anything. Like when companies are hard, like startups are hard, all of them are hard. And like when you get an opportunity to be a part of one where a lot of those hard things like go away because of who comes to the table to help or whatever, and you're able to like step back and know that that's part of the experience, and if like you embrace it, it's a whole different thing. And I think it's just been it's very much like what a lot of our last year has been like, and like hopefully it stays on that path because it's going pretty great for Dropbox still.
It's really cool. Do you if you have a startup right now, if you were a founder who is trying to push that boulder uphill, do you feel like is that a bad indicator? Is that a potentially a normal indicator?
I think it's a normal indicator. I think we are. I really do think that we have been luckier than most, and I think one of the things that happens with a lot of startups is that people don't appreciate how lucky they are when things work out. And the dudes who make lots of money and build a successful company, they think they know everything because they had the successful company. And the truth is that, like, I don't know how much is luck and skill or whatever it is, but I think it's good if it's hard. It's good if it's hard, right? Like, if it's easy, you're probably not trying hard enough, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, our last year has been so hard. I mean, as much as it sounds like glamorous and fun, like, I thought I was done. Like, we're at the point in my life where I, like, sleep on floors and couches, and it turns out, like, in this mode, like, you sleep on floors and couches. Like, we had our first office in San Francisco was a live workspace that went from 2 guys living there as a temporary space to, like, 8 people there, and it was like a total frat house pigsty that a couple girls lived in too. And it was just like, this is disgusting. And I would show up, and it was like, well, there's nowhere to sleep, and it's 1 a.m, I'll just sleep on the floor. And it's like, I thought I outgrew that like 12 years ago or something. And so it's not, I mean, my wife lives in Kansas City still. Like, I flew Monday morning on the 6 a.m. to New York for a 45-minute meeting with the dude who runs NBC Olympics and NBC Sports, and then took a 7-hour flight to get to San Francisco at midnight on Monday to have a breakfast meeting at 7:30 on Tuesday. It's not like it's been easy, right? Like, it's like we worked our asses off, but I think we just appreciated all of the things that have come to us in ways that we didn't have to work that hard for.
Yeah, my wife's in the back, like, shaking her head, like, that better not happen to you.
I'm sorry for you back. Is that you back there? I'm sorry. It's keep them doing this interview thing. This other thing's hard.
Yeah, this is easy compared to what you do. So talk to us a little bit about, what's our time? Somebody have a clock? What time are we at? 45. Okay, thanks. Talk to us about the product. So you guys just pushed a big update in the last 15 or 20 days, right?
Yep, first day of South by.
Talk to us about what did you push in that update? What did you learn that caused those changes?
Yeah, so super quick, right? Like Zaarly, you go there, you say what you want, what you're willing to pay for it, gets tagged on the map. People around you want to make money. People buy used cars. They get gardeners, bakers, whatever the hell you want. You can ask for anything. True, like, meta marketplace, right? We came out of the gate really driven by me, right? Like, I believed, because I went to Harvard Business School and I know enough about, like, economics to be dangerous, that, like, anonymity in marketplaces should be a good thing, right? And technically that's right. It turns out that, like, we learned over the course of the first few months that emotionally it's very wrong when you're talking about hyper-local person-to-person marketplaces, right? Like, it's nice, you don't care who's giving it to you if you buy it on Amazon. You do care if you're going to meet that person in real life. And so the big things that we rolled out was profiles, reputation, and reviews. You can do all the fancy things and, like, connect it to Facebook, and it turns out that, like, people trust other people more if they have more than 100 Twitter followers. So if you connect your Twitter follower, like your Twitter account, it doesn't tell you who they are on Twitter, but, like, it shows you how many followers they have, right? You can put a picture, all this kind of stuff. So, like, introducing, like, real faces. It's very, very picture driven. Every listing now has the face of the person. Buyers can still choose to post anonymously. Once they get into a transaction, they can reveal who they are in case they're asked for something weird or a surprise present or whatever it is, right? Or they're famous or whatever, and they don't want people to know it's them. Sellers started banging down our door very early on, and they were like, dude, we get the anonymity thing, but we want to tell them who we are, and you don't provide, like, an avenue for us to do that. And so please let us, because we think it will improve our chances of getting chosen, right? Because in our market, it's one buyer, multiple sellers making an offer, and the buyer chooses. And so the sellers, like, really have to sell, right? Like, in short form messaging or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So that was, like, a huge one. And then the other one was that, like, we came out of the gate, and this makes all the sense in the world still, but we got to go through the whole early adopter, like, curve to get there, was that it was a blank form. We went on Zaarly, like, hey, you can ask for anything. It's like, dude, that's crazy. I can ask for anything. Oh shit, what do I ask for? And everybody would, like, look at it like, what do I ask for? And then, like, 3 days later, I would get emails like, I thought of what to ask for. And I was like, oh my God, it's the worst user activation period of all time. And so we launched something into South by, whatever, we call it buyer inspiration internally. But what it really is like, first user experience, you go in and it's a recommended list of things to ask for that, like, we actually know their supply for. We know you'll have a great experience. And it's nice and sexy, and you can, like, browse through things, and you can see, like, you can ask for a couch, or you can ask for someone to clean your house, or you can, have someone come and teach you Japanese or whatever it is you want to learn, right?
And do you and these are the main things that people are asking for on your platform anyways, right? Is it something you find that, like, there are 10 things that get asked 90% of the time, or what is that ratio?
I wish.
Is it just all over the board?
Yeah, it's all over the board. We can control it a lot, actually. If we tell people, hey, you should ask for this, it turns out they ask for that. Like, these things work. So it's like, you see, like, oh my God, someone can make me my favorite cake and bring it to my house. I want that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and
Yeah,
so,
I
like,
saw that one.
yeah, so you see these ideas. That's like one of my favorite. Buy cake like every 2 weeks on Zaarly. And it's awesome. Like, I love it. Like, it's really awesome for that, right?
Yeah, get your hair cut. I get that one.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I get killed for that one. And so it's
Don't lie.
so that was the second one, and the cool part about that is, and what we tried at South by, and it just works, and we're just now starting to get the pieces in place to really ramp it up, is we can actually geographically control that. So like, I didn't have time tonight, but like I could literally put it so that like in this room, if you launch Zaarly, you would get a custom list of things to ask for. And as soon as you walked out of this room and hit refresh, it would be the list that people see in Palo Alto. And so in Austin, we launched that. And so like the first 3 categories were all South by Southwest specific stuff. And one of them was like it started raining. And it was like in 3 minutes, we launched it like, hey, stay warm and dry. And all of a sudden, everybody started requesting umbrellas because that's what we told them to ask for. And when it stopped raining, we turned it off and it disappeared again, right? And so it's like really like, these are like pillars of the platform that like make a marketplace work. And that's and then just normal sexy design stuff and fix broken things.
What in terms of your user profiles, what types of have you had issues where have you had problems on the platform in terms of Craigslist style?
Yeah, so we're super aggressive. Like we take all shady or creepy content down. We have somewhere like an internal piece.
Like what would qualify as something creepy?
I'll pay $50 for a blowjob. Pretty creepy, right?
That's creepy.
The 60-year-old dude whose picture got flagged because he took a naked picture of himself in the mirror and tried to send it to somebody. Yeah, they didn't get that picture.
I wish I wouldn't ask this question.
I'll forward it to you.
Let's take this part out.
So we actually built early on because we knew this would be like a lit. So this is one of the top 3 questions we got from all investors. What about creepy stuff?
The naked guy?
I'm
sorry. I meant post.
No. Like the question is, so we actually built a crawler early on. We actually crawled all the Craigslist code words in the personal sections and stuff, and we had a really, really fancy guy come in and help us with this who used to run privacy and security for YouTube, which is really hard because it's video.
Sure.
And so almost everything gets algorithmically flagged. It doesn't actually ever go up if it comes. I mean, like it's aggressive. Like
if anyone flags it, I think that's what the early YouTube system was, right? If anyone flagged it, it went into a pool that got reviewed
so
by
ours
a
happens
person.
automatically first, right? Okay. So like algorithm blocks it, and then if we're wrong, then they'll post it up there, and then it actually also gets a manual setup. Like everything gets a manual review, and so if anything's weird, then one of the other things we rolled out with profiles is you could flag someone if they were creepy. So like putting some of the power in the hand of the users, but like we see the creepy things, but nobody else does for the most part. We see bizarro things sometimes in there, but we're like, oh, whatever. If you want someone,
Derek's job, he can figure it out.
Yeah. We have smart kids who are good at dealing with this stuff, and so it's a really. I mean, we're trying to build a marketplace that like new moms and soccer moms and my grandpa uses, and like you if you go there and you see weird stuff, they're never going to come there, right? Like Craigslist could be 50 times bigger than it is, but it's weird and it's terrible,
scary,
and like we'll fix that.
Yeah. What in terms of your early distribution, how did you guys? So you talk about if you're going to be a marketplace, you've got to kind of engineer some of this stuff, right? Like people aren't just going to come in and be like, "Sweet, like I'm going to just start selling stuff," right? You have to like Airbnb. They're notorious for going to Craigslist and bringing those listings over into onto their site.
Yeah, that works.
It works.
Yeah,
works well.
You guys. There's a lot of marketplaces out there. There's a lot of stagnant marketplaces out there. There's classified newspapers. There's all kinds of things. But like we have a sales team also that onboard supply. It's all they do all day long is they like call small businesses, they call independent contractors, and like we have like 100% conversion because we say like, hey, want more money? And they're like, are you like Groupon? We're like, no. They're like, yes, then we do. And I'm serious. It's like one of the top questions we get, right? So we know we've got Craigslist sellers who like love Zaarly because they feel like they actually get to help people with faces now. We've got eBay power sellers who have like become in love with this thing because they get to meet people in the communities around them. There's an army of Google execs who just love Zaarly because they don't care. Like they'll do stuff for $5 if it's close enough by because they just like to meet people who live in their neighborhood because whatever they like have spent like the last year playing around in Europe, and it's like we make online what start as online transactions become like very personal and like just create connections that never would have happened. So we have a nanny. My wife and I have a nanny who like is full-time nanny. Like comes to our house every morning like 7 a.m. She like leaves like when we get home from work. And I met her because she showed up and fulfilled a Zaarly to drive me to the airport. Like what? right? She just moved to town. She'd been there 5 days. She thought she was a waitress. She's looking for a job. She'd been a nanny for 7 years before. I was like, man, this seems weird. It's too good to be true. I like reference checked the hell out of her, talked to her last bosses. My wife loved her. Like, she has measurably made like our life and our marriage better. And like, I found her because she came to pick me up and drive me to the airport so that she could make $30. Like, that is the kind of magic that happens on this platform. And it's not, this is not a place that's about doing weird things. It's like, it really is like how the economy should work.
I mean, if for the people out there that are trying to build marketplaces, do you think there is any way that a startup can build a marketplace without self-engineering some of those things? Is there any way that those things just happen organically? Like, or do you think?
I would never say that there's not a way. I don't know the way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are trying to do quite clever things, like in the world social and all this kind of stuff, and like, your friend wants to sell this thing, and blah 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 blah. Social and commerce are bordering on at odds with each other, and there's ways to do cool hooks and kind of ways to like engineer some things that like help people share and stuff, and so some of that will help, like it amplifies it, help things go faster. It's why like hopefully it's not going to take us 10 years to build this company, but maybe we can do it in 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But it is true that like they're hard and they take work, and like, I mean, we literally had like teams of people before we ever launched who were on the ground, who were just volunteers, who were excited about what we were doing. Like, I don't mean like a couple of them, I mean like 1,200 people, like,
wow,
who had volunteered to like help fulfill things in the city they were in because they wanted this thing to work, right? And like we were able to marshal a lot of resources in a way that like cost us nothing to kind of get us out of the gate. And now we're kind of at this point where that's like really starting to transition. It's like much more of a machine now. Like, it just works. Like, we know how many people we're onboarding. We know when sellers come. We know when buyers come. We can track the metrics. We know that we do 4 times the number of deals every day this month as we did the month before. Like 400x improvement in a month, pretty good, right? I don't know, it's gonna be 400x or 400% next month, but I hope so, right?
Yeah.
Like, it gets to be a pretty big company pretty fast, like that. But one data point does not a trend to make, so like we'll see.
Yeah, and then you're talking about metrics. Tell us, what are your biggest 3 cities, and what are your biggest?
Biggest 3 cities: New York, San Francisco, and is it Oklahoma City still?
Yeah, but it's a radius thing.
Right. Our top 10, I mean, like Chicago's in there, Seattle's in there, LA is in there. It's pretty awesome in LA, but also like weird one-off things get fulfilled in like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, because like it just works, right?
Huh.
And so, so it's you can use this thing everywhere.
How did you guys? So you guys what is your mobile app to website traffic? Is there a ratio?
Yeah, it's tricky because like a lot of people use both. Like, they'll start it on web and then move to mobile, or start it on mobile, move to web, or whatever. And peak times, like we've seen as much as 84% of our usage is mobile.
Okay.
Some of that though, like
and that's app, or that's mobile web, or what is that? App.
With app and Android, or iPhone and Android.
Okay. And do you do you have a large percentage or a significant percentage that are browsing the website via their phone, or is it, or pretty much everyone in the app?
App or website on the computer. Like,
Okay.
I mean, on the computer, like we've got, good usage on the computer. We've actually really changed around like a lot of our web stuff in a way that like we're doing some really, really cool stuff on the tech front for like any nerds who are into it, with the way that we use like adaptive like JavaScript and stuff, so that what you see on the web very soon, like actually some of the stuff we're rolling out next week, is exactly the same as you see on mobile, but it's a totally different experience because based on browser size, it automatically detects and like reords. It's super slick.
Cool.
And so it's actually letting us take the entire full-featured web version and bring it to mobile in totally reusable code. And stuff like that was just like not possible even a year ago. If you tried to do this, it would have been a disaster. And like, there's amazing tools out there for this stuff today.
Yeah. So this type of application, it thrives in where there's a high concentration of these transactions or these sellers, right? So as an app, you can't control what's happening. You can't control locations. It's not like Red Beacon, who just launched this was a few years ago, but they only launched in San Francisco, right? They only launched in DC.
Yeah, you could, right? Like,
so,
a lot of people told us early on, right? Like, you must launch in one city if you're going to do this. Like, it's what you have to do. This is how you build marketplaces. I built a marketplace and it didn't work because we went blah, 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 blah. And like, smart people say those things, right?
Who said it? Who was
I'll
that?
skip that part. But the guy who's an amazing trusted advisor and talented guy who built a really, really cool. No. He doesn't talk about things like that. He never tried to build a marketplace. He's a product guy though, for sure. He loves product.
Yeah.
But
So you give good advice?
Yeah, awesome advice.
Is he?
Yeah, awesome. Awesome advice, awesome. Anyway, whatever. That's a separate conversation. But so like a lot of people told us that you can actually do it on mobile, right? Like Uber does it, right? You launch Uber and you're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and says, "Hey, dude, no cars where you are." Like, sorry, bro. Like, hopefully we'll get there sometime.
Yeah.
And actually, that's how they decide to go to new cities. How many people launch that app in places where they're not already? Like, that's how they pick the next city to go to.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. We'll know. We'll find out someday if it's a good idea or not. But like, we basically said, like, too bad. We're gonna just launch it.
Yeah.
And it ended up creating a bunch of petri dishes for us where we could learn so fast, and where some communities just kind of took to it and started using it, and nobody was there to really like help, and we're like, whoa, that worked. And in some we were like, God, we really thought it was going to like blow up here, and it just didn't blow up. But all of those things created like amazing learning experiences for us, and it's helped us get like really, really tight. And we really just didn't have the tools to do city by city by city. Now we do. But instead of doing city by city by city, I think we're going to do like 30 city by 30 city kind of a thing. And it's not that it won't be available other places. It's just that like the experiences in those places will be amazing. Like this thing works amazing in San Francisco. It works median in Palo Alto, right? Like those are worlds apart in almost all ways.
Sure.
And just urban density, all of this kind of stuff, right? Like it's like if you ask for things that like we've got like supply for, like if you ask for caterers, bakers, event planners, all that kind of stuff in Palo Alto, you'll absolutely get it. If you ask for like a taxidermied white goose, like probably not going to get it out here, but you might get it in San Francisco. I don't know. Like it's crazy what you get there. So
or Todd lives for sure.
Yeah,
that's true.
So
hey, I'm a hater. What can I say?
Well, so eBay doesn't. So you talk about like there being this huge 50. You know that your goal is this $50 billion company, and you look at like eBay, and like eBay works great in Palo Alto. I don't know, probably didn't always work great in Palo Alto, but you know, Amazon works great in Palo Alto, right? So is Zaarly going to work great in Palo Alto once it hits critical mass?
For sure.
It is.
Yeah, Zaarly will work great everywhere. It will work great in Lincolnton, Georgia, where I grew up eventually.
Yeah.
But you know, really what it is as more people get on the system, the menu of what's possible gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And so we have a big menu of what's possible. Big menu. Like you can be damn creative and it works in San Francisco and New York and Kansas City and LA and Seattle and some of these places. Whereas if you do like the normal use case stuff that like our first time, second time, third, people don't get creative until they get a little further. Like they've done this thing a few times and then they're like, oh dude, you can't ask for anything here, right? And so, you know, every time they have those good experiences, like in the core supply stuff, like it creates like another evangelist for us.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, I think that's all I got. Hey, let's give Bo a big. You want to say something? Go ahead.
No. Good.
Let's give Bo a big round of applause. I will repeat it. Put it back. I wanted to ask you, as people are thinking about questions. Okay, what about competitors? So this is the interesting thing to me about this space is that like there have been some established competitors trying to do this like for years before you,
I know.
and like. It just seemed like nothing ever happened. It seemed like
I know.
they got funding, they're like getting press, like, you know, but like they're not growing, no one's using it. And then you guys come on the scene last year and it just, this whole thing really
good
takes
timing,
off.
right? Like timing play, right? But I think the same thing, like eBay was a timing play, right? Like eBay was not a new idea when Pierre started eBay. Like lots of people, I probably met 5 people who was like, God, I had the idea before eBay had the idea. I was like, oh, how'd that go for you? No, I got to go. I mean, I think it's normal, right? Like startups don't, like, I think in some ways, like what we do, like we're like the oldest idea ever. There's like a 5,000-year-old idea that like you want something and you wish you could make an offer to someone. Like it's super, super simple. I think that mobile devices and like, you know, the things you say in a VC presentation, but that are actually true but sound terrible. They're like, we're at the center of 4 macroeconomic forces, and it's like, you know, location-based services and ubiquitous mobile data and social graph and mobile payments and whatever. But it's true, right? Like all of those things that are like kind of coming into their own at the same time. Like we just kind of built a little layer there that creates transparency where like it didn't exist before. And like that's where I think like great internet companies come from. They come from creating transparency where it didn't exist. So like, yeah, not a new idea. Timing was good. I think we're going to see a shitload of companies in this space, not like a couple. Like I think we've got on a spreadsheet somewhere tracking like 83 of them that have been started since we started. And like literally like there are some of them out there. One of them had an announcement today that if you go and like read their marketplace page, it's a copy and paste from us. The same typos. It's
Flattering, though,
Are
right?
you kidding? Like, get a little creative, dude.
Is that barley? Is that
No. We joke about that a lot, right? Like everybody, I'm like, I don't know. Like, what about that? Yeah, let's just go do, let's do barley. Like, we'll be fine on that one. So, I will see a ton of them, right? Like, I think actually, like, because it is such a simple concept, it sounds much easier than it is, right? Like, of course, like I can build a website where people go and say what they want and list their price. I say good luck to you is what I say because they're just hard companies to build, and I don't actually worry. I'm not. There'll be a few interesting companies built. There'll be a handful of $50 to $80 million companies built in the space. Maybe a couple $100 million companies, and there'll be one or two $10+ billion companies, like real like generational special companies. And I don't want to build a $200 million company. It's not. I mean, maybe that's where we end up if things don't go well. But like, I'll be bummed.
Anybody have any questions? It's your chance. Yeah, go ahead.
So I noticed in your marketplace you have a little bit more on the tasks and like I want somebody to do this kind of thing, maybe less product. One thing I noticed from my own experience, if I have something to sell, I know exactly what that is. But if I want to buy something, it's much harder to describe that concretely.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 10 different things. Are you guys maybe trying to figure out solutions to that problem?
Yeah. Well,
So the question, let me just repeat
Sure.
it. I think I got it, or maybe you got it. But are you trying to figure out the solution for people that are just kind of discovering or want to find things to buy?
Yeah. So products are hard. It's service, products, experiences. Like people ask for all of these things. Like it's true. Like products are hard because of the specificity of individual items and all that kind of stuff. We have like a pretty good engine for it actually, but it's more manual work happens on those engines internally. It's not like a bunch of people or whatever, but it's like a clever dude and like some Odesk people that like help us go and find things for people. And then once you find a supplier, you get them on the system to supply more and more of that. And so it's like about building that base all the time. So like, yeah, it's hard and it's really different. And some people think we're crazy for trying to do all of these things at once, products plus services plus backstage passes and tickets to events and your place in line and all of these things like all at once. They are all different challenges, I guess is what I would say. And like the way our organization is structured internally is to tackle them as different challenges, like different teams with different budgets and resources like attack those different problems. And so we kind of secretly have like 3 or 4 companies inside of Zaarly working exactly on this problem of how you answer that uniquely for each one. And it's one of the reasons why like we didn't raise $1 million and try to make it last 2 years, right? Like you need humans to make that stuff work. But there's also cool things like cool tools coming out for this, like Priceonomics. So like these kids who are starting, I think they were in YC this year and they were at the demo day yesterday, working on ways to like help that discovery happen better and stuff. Well, and there's going to be more and better tools out there for that. But for now, it's hard work and it's a lot of manual work. And like as we find ways to build tools, we build them internally. Hard though.
Go ahead.
Any plans going international and expanding your services to Europe?
What are your plans to go international and into Europe?
Yep. Yes. I would say like stay tuned. I'd do it tomorrow if I could, but I'm not quite ready. But I'm real excited about it, and it will be sooner than later.
Yes.
So on eBay, a lot of people started creating eBay stores and becoming, eBay professionals. That's where they made their living. Do you see that starting to happen? Like, are there people making either their entire living or a good chunk of it?
Yeah, starting to happen, right? And it took a long time, actually. It was something we talked to Meg about quite a bit. Like, took a long time at eBay, right?
Yeah.
eBay, at the end of its first year of operation, had 40,000 users. I think we have 40,000 users in like our first month or something like that. And I mean, it's because it's really different today than it was then. Like their big challenges were like, we need to teach people how to get on the internet, right? Like, whoa, like that's a really big challenge. Or it's a little different today. Yeah, we're starting to see it, right? Like we see glimpses of it sometimes, and then we see like like groups of people who will like start running dispatch and have people working for them going to do stuff, and they'll be like, hey, I'll give you 80% of this until that person figures out like, hey, why would I give you 20%? I'll just do it myself, kind of a thing. So we empower a lot of individuals like that. Like, there's a couple, we see cool things, like lots of couples love doing Zaarly stuff on the weekends, because like instead of like going out and spending money, they go and do fun stuff, money. Meet people and make money. There was a couple in Austin at South by that in one day made $1,000 just giving people rides and doing stuff for people.
Wow.
Like in one day. We had a school teacher in Kansas City who made $5,000 in December hanging Christmas lights for people on Zaarly.
Is that your wife?
No.
Isn't she in Kansas City?
Yeah, she's a doctor though, not a school
Oh,
teacher.
sorry.
The reason that I found out about it is because he did our Christmas lights.
Okay.
And so she was like, "Hey, how'd you hear about Zaarly?" Da 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 da. And he's like, "Dude, you're like the 10th job I've done." And we ended up following. We make $5,500. This guy makes $26,000 a year, and he made $5,500 in 1 month hanging Christmas lights after school because he set an alert on Zaarly for Christmas lights, and every time somebody posted it, he responded and said, "Hey, I've already done 5. I'm really good at this. Da 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 da. I've got a truck. I've got a team, or whatever." And he just got picked over and over and over again. And he just rocked it. And so like, yeah, we see glimpses of it, and like I'm super excited about that starting to like really scale. One, because it makes the marketplace work better, and two, because like that's like the dream, right? Like you build a tool that helps people like create a living to like pay their mortgage and like provide for their family. Like that's amazing. And so yeah, hopefully we get a lot of it.
Do you have a name for those people yet? What do you call them?
Nothing good. We just talk about them as power sellers right now. Nothing bad, but yeah.
Do you see people that just do everything? They're like, I'll go,
Yeah, we call them hustlers.
bake you a cake.
Yeah, that's the hustlers. Like hustlers are an important part of our market, and as we get into new markets or whatever, it's hilarious to find these. Like there's a dude, what is this? Sir Aaron was his name on there. He did like 80 deals like in the first 3 months we were live, and he was just handy. He was fixing sinks and like hauling trash for
Baking
people.
cakes.
Yeah, whatever, dude. Right? There's a PhD student in Chicago, Liz. Yeah, who's done like 95 deals. Everything. Somebody posted I dropped my car keys in a drain when I was getting out of my car, and I can see them, but they're 20 feet below street level. In 45 minutes, she showed up with a fishing pole and a hook and was getting these things out. And she made $75 like in 45. She did 90 deals, and it was just pure hustle. And like those people actually like help launch this market. Sometimes they're college students. Like I don't know where they come from, but like God bless them because they are wonderful.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've obviously had you have very ambitious plans for the company. What's kind of your biggest concern in continuing to grow the company?
So what's your biggest concern in continuing to
Yeah.
grow the company?
Mine, like at this moment in time, it's actually I would have a different answer like 2 weeks ago than I have today, and I think that's kind of normal, right? Like I think every 90 days it kind of resets. Right now, it is about like the culture of this company is so valuable to like the effort that we get and how people care about it and how people like when in doubt you make shit work. It's really hard to take that mindset and that culture past about 50 people, and we're coming up on kind of close to that. And in some ways, like we're going to take a breath right now. Like I don't have like 20 open spots to hire. I mean, unless 20 amazing people walk through the door, I guess I'd do it. But like we're going to take a breath and like really start to invest in institutionalizing some of that culture in ways that like it's accessible, and when new people join the company, they know how to be a part of it and things like that. And it is like the thing that right now is like definitely top of mind for me because it gets away from you really, really fast when a company is moving so quickly.
Let's do 2 more. Yeah.
Yeah, so can you comment on the sequencing of your user acquisition in the marketplace? So would you promote Zaarly aggressively to buyers when you have limited sellers?
So where did you start with your distribution? Did you start with the sellers? Did you
So
start with the
two-sided
buyers?
marketplace, buyers and sellers. Where do you start, right? We started with buyers. Mistake. Oops. And we had a belief early on that a lot of the buyers who come would also end up being sellers, and there's this like serendipitous discovery of like, hey, I'm a buyer, but I see this other person posted this thing, I can provide it, I have it, or whatever, and kind of like get rocking. We studied this a lot actually last year, and what we learned is that like in almost all marketplaces, 85 to 90% of sellers are also buyers, but 1 to 2% of buyers are also sellers. And so where we've been heavily invested the last few months is actually ramping supply up, and like actually 2.5 weeks ago for the first time, our supply is exceeded our demand, and it's because we turned off all ads, we turned off all promotion on the demand side, and it's been growing, but not fueled by us much, just by word of mouth and stuff. But our supply side has just been ramping up through the roof because that's something we can control. And so it's always a balance, right? It's like you ramp up one, you accelerate here. You ramp up one, you accelerate here. But there are certain areas where if I have the magic button on like here's where I can get 10 zillion pieces of demand, I know I can go get the supply. I take it. But that's not really how our marketplace works, right? Like in a marketplace for anything, those things start to emerge over time. Like one of the things Meg told us, and then I'll be quiet, was like the way that eBay started early on was with these categories. Well, not that early on. They were 4 years at the time, but like when they were 4 years old, that's kind of like where we were at 1 year, I think, in most metrics. They had like 15 categories in eBay. if you go to eBay now, there are like so many categories you can't even comprehend them all. And she said their method for choosing categories ended up being they monitored the miscellaneous category, and anytime there got to be more than 300 items that they could group together, they made a category for it. 300 ended up being the number where they took that supply, they bundled it up, and then they created a category for it. And so we're taking our own pulse a lot to figure out like what that means in our world and all that kind of stuff. But it's why markets are hard, right? Matching supply and demand, like you got to have them both in sync, and like there's not really like a right answer, right? Like if you had infinite supply, if you had inventory, if you had a special deal on something, yeah, go kill it on demand. You can always like, you know, dial up somebody to like send another truckload of stuff. A little different in our marketplace than that. And so yeah, so our board meeting tomorrow, like we're talking about supply. The board meeting in 2 quarters from now, or two months from now, I guess, we'll be talking about demand. And I think it will probably be like that for a few years.
One more? Yeah, go ahead.
When you were walking up to the stage with the Geo Bay idea, what was the, why did you focus on commerce? Like what was the motivation, you know, at that moment with?
I hate Craigslist. I think it's terrible. And I'm a pretty purebred capitalist. And I think that great marketplaces that find efficiency actually make the world a better place. And I think putting restrictions on marketplaces really limits more than just the marketplace. It like starts to limit like important things like human creativity and flexibility and like people's happiness and all of that kind of stuff. And like we want to build a marketplace that fosters that. And there's not one out there that leverages there's not one out there that captures what's possible today. And like that's what we want to build. And it is like the idea for this had been sitting in my phone for 2 years. And I tweeted something 2 months before the startup weekend with absolutely no context at all, knowing this company was anywhere in my life, that said, I'd just seen an advertisement for the 60-minute special, The Craigslist Killer. And I tweeted something like, I wish the Craigslist Killer special was about the startup that's going to kill Craigslist instead of an actual killer. And like 6 weeks later, like we're working on this company, Zaarly, and I was like, whoa, that was a weird foreshadowing in my life. I think it's, you know, I think there's just like a very, very special opportunity at this time right now. And I personally have never been this close to seeing something like that. Like I felt like the weekend that we did this, I felt like we saw something up close that like no one knew about, and that we could see 5 years into the future, and that like we had a baby Google in our hands and like no one knew it. And it was like, I might be totally wrong, but like I've never seen this. So like, let's see if that's what it is. And yeah, I don't know. It was a really, really fun way to start. And so far, like I think we're still at the start, and it's all been really fun.
Let's give Bo another big round of applause.